Well, we all know from experience that some of the best education and best learning comes, unfortunately, from when we make mistakes. It's the ones that stick in our mind. It's also the ones that we tend to go down the rabbit hole trying to figure out why, what happened and why. And this is an example of that. This is an exposure to agave where I was a company officer and it led to the injury of 3 firefighters. It's something I won't ever forget for sure. And it's definitely one where we went down the rabbit hole and actually created this PowerPoint slide 10 years ago to share with others so that they can learn from our lessons or my lesson. And what brought this back to my mind or reminding me of it is that I was watching, as I was driving down the road, I saw somebody putting in agave plants. So the plants are out there, the hazard is there, and you just wouldn't expect it. So we all know that, you can take an agave plant and make tequila out of it. Well, I can make you drink tequila and you can be hurt for a couple of days, however long the hangover lasts. What we didn't know, and I definitely didn't know, is that the sap from that same plant can cause immediate discomfort that lasts up to 2 weeks, including nausea and vomiting. And what's even more crazy and worse is that the itching can last off and on, come back off and on for up to a year. And that's exactly what happened to one of our firefighters. 3 firefighters were exposed, and one of them, the exposure actually continued for well up to a year off and on. And so they were exposed during firefighting and fire suppression activities, which I'll get into in a second. Also interesting to note is that one of the firefighters, his exposure was from doing care as he was doing treatment of the other firefighters. Think of it like poison oak, the secondary contamination. And I will tell you, there's nothing more unnerving as a leader or company officer or chief officer than to come out and see firefighters lined up on the corner or on the street, sitting on the curb, and a paramedic throwing darts of epi at them. And there's actually a picture of it in this PowerPoint I'll show you in a second. I will never forget that. And again, that's why I wanted to share this with you. So I hate to say typical single-family dwelling ranch-style house because typical in firefighting is a horrible word, but this was a single-family ranch-style home. And as you can see, the right side of this would be your hallway and your bedrooms and bathrooms, and the left side would be kitchen, living room, dining room. And in this case, it had an attached sunroom that was on the Charlie side, attached to the house that was involved in fire. And it's kind of how the exposure occurred. So first line went in the door, and here's just an example of that. Here's firefighting operations. Obviously, fire has been extinguished at this point. We've not made it to the sunroom part. We've been into it, but the overhaul part is just kind of starting to occur now. And so lines were brought in the front door. Typical, again, firefighting operations. So this is the back. I went back the next day, and this is daytime pictures. And what you're looking at is the sunroom. So this is the Charlie side of the structure, and it had a sunroom attached to the living room. And you can see there's quite a bit of stuff in there. So it was difficult to overhaul, difficult to complete extinguishment on. And I take note of the agave plants that are on that far side. So we're looking from the Bravo Charlie corner to the Charlie Delta corner. And on the Delta side of the structure was a row of agave plants you'll see in a second. So the decision was made to take a line down the Bravo side to get to the sunroom to complete extinguishment and overhaul. And so they went through the gate, brought it around the back, and we're working, putting out the rest of the fire. Now, at some point, we realized that the drop line, the service drop, had dropped. It wasn't touching the line, but it was there and it was a hazard. And so we said, there's no reason to keep operating this line. We can just come from the Delta side and do the same thing. Just leave the line here. There's no rush. We're just doing overall at this point. Let's bring a line down the Delta side. So a line was drugged to the Delta side, and when they got there, they found these agave plants that were in the way. And we all know that agave plants have those big thorns on them. They're hard to walk on. They're hard to get around. So a decision was made to use a chainsaw to cut through them to cut a path. And you can see they've been cut. You can see the cut leaves on the ground. You can see the plants have actually been cut down so they can get around. Well, we also know that chainsaws are not the most clean. They're not a scalpel. And when you use a chainsaw, it throws a lot of stuff in the air, large chunks. And in this case, it was throwing chunks as well as sap. And it was aerosolizing it to a degree as well. So it made the exposure as well as inhalation exposure and skin exposure that much more hazardous because it really threw everything up in the air. It got it over everybody's turnouts. It got them in their face, their arms. Anything was exposed. But it did a really good job of coating them in the sap of this agave plant. So during this incident, very shortly after these plants were cut, we had people experience what's called exposure to agave sap. And this includes not only skin irritation, but nausea and vomiting. And I think that's what really threw us off. Was unexpected. We've all, been exposed to poison oak and other plants where we've had skin irritation, but never really nausea and vomiting. And so HazMat was on scene. We were HazMat. We didn't know this would happen. Nobody on scene had any clue this would occur and that it was this harmful. Just, again, totally unexpected. So the firefighters were treated on scene by Squad 50. One of them was sent to the hospital. He was working a callback, so he came back to duty the next day, his regular shift, and he became symptomatic all over again, nausea and vomiting, and was sent home. And he actually experienced symptoms on and off for the next year, which, again, to me, disturbed me the most, made me feel the worst. So what is an agave plant? Century plant, agave plant, there's multiple different kinds, and they all have different, varying degrees of issues with the sap. But the sap is hazardous on all of them. And in fact, Native Americans at some point used them to coat their spears to make poison spears. So the juice can lead to what's called acute dermatitis, and it usually is blistering and redness that lasts for up to 2 weeks. And that's what occurred for this firefighter. And again, the disturbing part is that it lasts up to a year afterwards, even when there's no rash visible. And that's what happened to one of our firefighters. He had on and off again symptoms for the next year. So why? The reason is these. So these microscopic needle-shaped crystals that are inside the plant get into your skin, and they sit there and they stay there. And I'm assuming that until they dissolve or get pushed out, that's why you continue to experience symptoms. These little bad boys get in there and they're not coming out. They're microscopic needles. So that's what occurred. It produces redness and blistering lasting up to 2 weeks. And then again, these episodes can occur or reoccur up to a year, even though there's no visible rash. It's just all of a sudden I'm itching like mad and I'm having problems again. And that's what happens. So something I learned, something I didn't expect, something nobody expected. I had a little fun with ChatGPT and I created this little hazard bulletin or whatever you want to call it. I will include it and the PowerPoint so that you can share this in the 980. Thanks all of you for listening. Have a good shift. Enjoy the job. Enjoy each other. Have a good day. And I end it with this PowerPoint slide, historical HazMat team PowerPoint slide, because this is the original PowerPoint that was created back in the day. Thank you to HazMat. Thank you to all of you. Again, have a good shift.